Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 3, Chapter 11. Towards the middle of July, Levin received a visit from the starosta of his sister's estate, situated about 20 versts from Pokrovsky. He brought the report about the progress of affairs and about the haymaking. The chief income from this estate came from the prairies inundated in the spring. In former years, the muzhiks rented these hayfields at the rate of 20 rubles a desyatin. But when Levin undertook the management of his estate and examined the hay crops, he came to the conclusion that the rent was too low, and he raised it to the rate of 25 rubles a desyatin. The muzhiks refused to pay this, and, as Levin suspected, drove away other lessees. When Levin himself went there and arranged to have the prairies mowed partly by day laborers, partly on shares, his muzhiks were greatly discontented with this new plan and did their best to block it. But it succeeded, and even the very first year the yield from the prairies was doubled. For the second and third summers the peasantry still resisted, but the harvesting went on in good order, and the present year they proposed to mow the prairies on thirds. And now the starosta came to announce that the work was done, and that he, fearing lest it should rain, had asked the accountant to make the division and turn over to the proprietor the 18 haycocks which were his share. But the unsatisfactory answer to his question why the hay had been mowed only in the largest prairie by the starosta's haste, in declaring the division without orders by the muzhik's whole manner, Levin was led to think that in this matter there was something crooked, and he concluded that it would be wise to go and look into it. Levin reached the estate just at dinner time, and leaving his horse at the house of his brother's nurse, he went to find the old man at the apiary, hoping to obtain from him some light on the question of the hay crop. The loquacious, friendly old man, whose name was Parmenovitch, was delighted to see Levin, told him all about his husbandry, and gave him a long account of his bees and how they swarmed this year. But when Levin asked him about the hay, he gave vague and unsatisfactory answers, and thus Levin's suspicions were more than ever strengthened. Thence he went to the prairie and examined the hayricks, and found they could not contain 50 loads each, as the muzhiks said. So he had one of the carts which they had used as a measure to be brought, and ordered all the hay from one of the ricks to be carried into the shed. The hayrick was found to contain only 32 loads, notwithstanding the starosta's protestations that the hay was measured right, and that it must have got pressed down in the cart. Notwithstanding the fact that he called God to witness that it was all done in the most righteous manner, Levin replied that as the division had been made without his orders, he would not accept the hayricks as equivalent to 50 loads each. After long parleys, it was decided that the muzhiks should take 11 of these hayricks for their share, but that the masters should be measured over again. The colloquy did not come to an end until it was after the lunch hour. When the division was going on, Levin, confiding the care of the work to the bookkeeper, sat down on one of the hayricks, which was marked by a laburnum stake, and enjoyed the spectacle of the prairie alive with the busy peasantry. Before him lay the bend of the river, and on the banks he saw the peasant women, and heard their ringing voices as they gossiped and moved in party-colored groups, raking the scattered hay over the beautiful green-growing aftermath into long, wavering brown ramparts. Behind the babui came the muzhiks with their pitchforks, who turned the windrows into huge, high-crested haycocks. On one side of the corner of the prairies, all cleared of hay, came the creaking telyegas in a long line. One by one they were loaded with the share belonging to the muzhiks, and their places were taken by the horse wagons heavy with the loads of fragrant hay. "Splendid hay weather, soon will be all in," said the starik, sitting down near Levin. "Tea leaves, not hay. Scatter it just like seeds for the chickens." Then pointing to the hayrick which the men were demolishing, the starik went on, "Since dinner pitched up a good half of it. Is that the last?" He shouted to a young fellow who, standing on the hills of a teljega and shaking his hempen reins, was driven by. "The last, batiushka," shouted back the young fellow, hauling in his horse. Then he looked down with a smile upon the happy-looking, rosy-faced Baba who was sitting on the hay in the teljega, and whipped up his steed again. "Who's that, your son?" asked Levin. "My youngest," said the Starik with an expression of pride. "What a fine fellow. Not bad. Married yet?" "Yes, 3 years come next Philippovok." "So, how are the children?" "How? Children? No, more's the pity. No, the hay, just tea leaves," he added, wishing to change the subject. Levin looked with interest at Vanka Parmenov and his young wife. Vanka was standing on the wagon, arranging, storing, and pressing down the fragrant hay which the handsome goodwife handed to him. The young Baba worked gaily, industriously, and skillfully. First she arranged it with her fork, and then, with elastic and agile motions, she exerted all her strength upon it. And bending over, she lifted up the great armful, and standing straight, with full bosom under the white chemise gathered into a red girdle, she handed it to her husband. Vanka, working as rapidly as he could so as to relieve her of every moment of extra work, stretched out his arms wide and caught up the load which she extended and trampled it down into the wagon. Then, raking up what was left, the Baba shook off the hay that had gotten to her neck, and tying a red handkerchief around her broad white brow, she crept under the teljega to fasten down the load. Vanka showed her how the ropes should be tied, and at some remark that she had burst into a roar of laughter. On the expressive faces of both could be seen the marks of strong young love newly awakened.